there is still some biological benefits to being born a man versus being born a female.
Athletes are and male athletes are. The best like MMA female athletes, cis, have male training partners. And most of the time, like, they're kicking their ass unless like they're...
We're good.
Today's topic, Jubilee.
Hi, my name is Howard. I've been a swimmer for 13 years and currently I'm on the UCLA triathlon team.
My name's Jing and I've been swimming for 11 years.
Hi, I'm Lexi. I've been playing indoor volleyball for 7 years. I've been playing beach volleyball for 3 years.
My name is Afton. I play women's flat track roller derby and I've been playing since the end of 2018.
Trans athletes have an unfair advantage. Step forward if you agree.
Let me make this clear. Trans women have an unfair advantage. Trans men have an unfair disadvantage.
When you first think about like transgender athletes, I guess the first thing you think about is, well, biologically, transition usually happens after puberty, right? So if this biologically male athlete goes through puberty, he gets like better bone structure, he has all these skills that he enhances, all these muscle that he puts on, and then he transitions. Yes, your testosterone levels go down, but you're always just gonna have that like things that you've gone through like during puberty that you have after you've...
That's pretty much where the video ends, but good job to her, she's correct.
I think it's dependent on the gender that they are transitioning to. For example, trans women do have somewhat of an advantage. Biological men are naturally born with higher bone density and larger lung capacity and a larger heart, and that's not something that can necessarily be changed with hormones. Of course, this isn't the same for trans men athletes.
For me, it's just on average, guys are typically a little bit stronger, a little bit larger, a little bit taller. So depending on the sport especially, it can give them a large advantage when you're looking at something like that. When it's something like swimming, having that ability to be a little bit larger lung capacity will overall affect that.
Can I have the disagreeer step forward?
Among cisgender men and cisgender women, there are naturally differences in their anatomy, in their hormonal levels, in their height, bone structure, all that stuff. Like any cisgender woman compared to another might have a different body type. Yeah. Some women are naturally very strong. If you take the advantage, which I think in most cases is the hormones, and if you compare the blood work and you're just looking at that, if they're on the same level, in my opinion, there just isn't an advantage because...
That's not what we're looking at. You're saying, yeah, but if we look at two people that have the same things, then, you know, there's no disadvantage. I understand that. That's not what the issue is, though. You're right, but that's not what the issue is.
You didn't address any of the things these people said about lung capacity, bone density.
Exactly.
Muscle twitch fibers, like...
That's not the issue.
And if you guys want, don't listen to me. There's like, I'll link to some of the studies in the description, but you talked about hormones. You didn't mention anything about going through puberty as a male.
If we match two people that are exactly the same but are different genders, yeah, you're going to have the same thing, but that's not what we're talking about.
If you guys are wondering why I'm like this, it's because I've seen this discussion happen like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah,
so it's the same disingenuous arguments.
Yeah.
You guys haven't addressed the concerns that these females have. You haven't. And you gloss over it with these like nonsense. Well, there's really like no even playing field in sports at all. So what? Should we get rid of weight classes by that logic? Should a lightweight fight a heavyweight? Yeah. So it's like, you know, some lightweights are stronger than some like weaker middle. Really? Is that what you're saying? Do you think lightweight wants to fight a heavyweight? By your logic, get rid of all categories since there's... Come on, bro. This is not a good argument.
The problem I see with this argument is that there's a large group of people that no matter what I do in a sport will always automatically assume that I have an advantage. But they're not taking into account hours that I put into practice.
Everybody had put these hours. That's the thing. And it doesn't make you less good at what you do. You're good at what you do, but you do have an advantage on top of the hours that you put. It's not just the advantage. You come here with the advantage. Is that you come here with all the hours that you had put in. Great, immense hours, right? Immense hours. A lot of a discipline that you have. On top of that, you add the advantage that you have. We're not disputing that. It's just that everybody has those big hours on set. Everybody in that field does, but you after that come up with that.
You want to know how ridiculous? You imagine a heavyweight who was competing with lightweights, And then people said, that's unfair. And he says, well, you're not taking into consideration all the hard work and all the time I put in. Nobody said you didn't work hard. We're just saying you have a physiological advantage.
That's it.
And that's why we have these categories. And you don't apply for this category.
That's it.
Period. Nobody said that these women can't beat you from time to time. If you go to a jiu-jitsu class and you got a huge man who's a black belt and a small man who's a black belt, guess what? Most of the time, the big man's going to win if he's really skilled at what he does. And they have about equal amount of skill. But sometimes the little guy's going to win every now and then. Doesn't change the fact that they should be at different weight classes.
Absolutely.
Even for jiu-jitsu, they have different weight classes.
I got one of my friends, she does MMA. She's been doing MMA longer
Yeah.
than I did. And she could have a field trip with my butt, like you said before. Because she's been...
Yeah. She can go ronda on you.
Yeah, she,
rowdy,
exactly. So,
Yeah.
But then if I start to train and put the same hours, then I'm gonna have an advantage because shit.
And you guys have to imagine, like, sports comes down to such thin margins. Take sprinting. We're talking about milliseconds. The difference between 9.58 and 9.78 is huge.
Just 9.
It's huge. And a 100-meter dash is huge. And so when you're talking about 10% faster or 9% faster,
It's
amazing.
Immense.
Roller derby is probably 90+% cis women. I get my ass handed to me. Like, yes, I am tall, and I can see that can be an advantage in some sports, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that I have an advantage.
Nobody says it guarantees. The categories are there to protect people on averages. Again, this is why it bothers me. These takes are disingenuous. Either these people aren't knowledgeable enough about this whole thing to have a sensible discussion about it, or they're being purposefully disingenuous.
The feeling comes into play, and it's the feeling that guides them. You know what I mean? And I get that. I can understand because in their position, it's very hard because you try to be someone you're not.
You want to live in the gender. Yes,
You're not who you want, like who you are. You know what I mean? And you just strive to be exactly. You try to be in line with yourself, and you can't. And that's just hard on everything, on the moral, on everything. And I get that. But
what we usually hear in the news and politics and stuff is about trans women just because they're in so much prominence, because they are winning. Like, I can't remember what her name is right now, but she was a powerlifter. She is a powerlifter. I think she went to Tokyo Olympics, and she's transgender. And they're winning by a large amount of weight.
If you truly believe that trans women have an advantage, even with hormones, then that means you truly believe that trans men have a disadvantage, even with hormones.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes,
And guess what? You don't hear about trans men flourishing in male sports.
there's a non-binary.
Point to one who made it to the Olympics and actually did have decent. You won't. Point to one who's really won records and beat out their male counterparts. You won't. The reason why you won't is because they have a disadvantage.
In the Canadian soccer team, there is a non-binary person that is playing with the women's soccer team. Assigned woman at birth. Now she's non-binary. She's playing with women. I don't see her playing with men on the soccer team.
She wouldn't be able to get on the soccer team. And this is no disrespect to these people. There's a reason why Serena Williams can't beat the 115th ranked male, okay? I'm not even talking about she can't even win a single set.
It's not us.
It's not because she's not extremely talented or she doesn't work hard. It's just, y'all we're built different, blah, blah, blah. You guys get it.
Her
You've heard
saying
these
that.
arguments.
It's her saying that.
So the argument that you hear most of the time is against trans women. So does that mean that you're okay with trans men having that disadvantage?
No, we're not okay with trans men having that advantage or the disadvantage. It's not fair. So even I wouldn't have a trans man fight with another man. That's a disadvantage. And that's not safe for them either. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's exactly what it means. I'm glad you got that. I hope it was not sarcasm, though.
When I was going through high school, I wrestled against females. I had to suppress both my hormones in my body, and I was still able to beat the men too, with my levels low. And I cut 15 pounds a week. that was crazy. But that's what I'm saying. The body is like a shell, and what we do every single day in the practices and the life lessons that we get, living 40 years on this earth. We just try to live life the best we can.
You didn't say anything. You said nothing. The body's a shell, blah. Guys, guess what? We're not all built different. Some people are genetically gifted. Sorry, you're not built like LeBron James. You never get to play
We're not
at this
built
level.
the same, you mean?
No matter how hard you work, some of you are just never going to get there. When it comes to athletics, it's patently unkind. Yes, hard work goes into it, undoubtedly. Discipline matters a lot. What you're genetically gifted with, if you're not built like Michael Phelps, good luck beating him.
My shell ain't never going to be 6'8". It's not happening.
It's not it.
Trans athletes should have a separate category in certain sports.
What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because they still need to compete. Same thing that they need. They need to strive.
Yeah.
But yeah, they need to have a different category.
I'm not even gonna lie to you. This video is really uninteresting because unfortunately the trans folks didn't come with any decent arguments.
No.
So I'm kind of just losing interest.
That's the thing. I understand. I do understand.
I wish they would have brought somebody who had different arguments or could actually argue against what the other person was, because there is no middle ground
No,
here.
they're just taking what they're saying and talking next to it.
Yeah.
They're like talking here when the point was right there.
Yeah.
So the response doesn't match what the first initial question was. So it's really not.
I don't want to say that they should be in a completely different category just because socially and legally, yes, they are that gender that they transition to, and putting them in another category just seems, from hindsight, seems wrong. But as an athlete, like in the sporting world, it just does seem a little bit unfair if you classify them under the same group, I guess.
Let's be clear about something. They're legally and socially women. They are not female by any stretch in any means. You cannot transition your sex, only your gender. And sports is not a matter of gender identity. It's a matter of sex.
There's some.
Okay?
There's some.
When they say women's sport, they're not talking about your gender expression or the hair that you like to wear. When they say women's sports, they mean the female anatomy. They're talking about biological females competing against biological females. Just because we didn't have the language to represent these ideas when we first created these sporting categories does not mean that's not what they were meant for. I think sometimes people conflate the whole idea of gender and sex, not realizing that just because you transition does not mean you change your sex. There is no trans person who can say that they change their sex. You can change your characteristics, you can change your hair, you can even do hormone therapy. You're never going to have the biology of a female. This is not to be denigrating, it's not to be mean. That's not what I'm saying. Whatever pronoun you want me to use, fine. You want to be acknowledged as a woman, not an issue. But women's sport is really just synonymous for female sports. That's what it's meant to represent. So let's be very careful when we say, well, they're socially, it has nothing to do with how they're legally viewed. Because even when they go to the doctor, when treating their issues and their health problems, will not just look at them as a woman. They have to see, like, were you born a female? And if you weren't, there's certain issues that male deal with that you need to be treated for and you need to be scanned for. Okay? There's no doctor who is responsible who can look at you and be like, well, I'm going to treat you like a woman in terms of your medical problems. That's ridiculous. Right? So let's just understand that difference. And again, I'm not saying this to be like, oh, you're not. It's not that. Just understanding the difference between sex and gender. I think sometimes I'm like, what? It's like women's bathrooms. They're female bathrooms.
Yes.
Right? The reason why there's no standing point to piss in the female bathroom or the women's bathroom is because it's meant for the female anatomy. That's all there is to it. People are using like modern day language and new things that we're learning about now to kind of conflate the conversation about things that have been here before that language even existed. It makes the whole discussion confusing.
And blurry.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that there definitely are some sports where your physical ability makes a much larger impact on the sport itself. Wrestling would be one of them, swimming, track, something like that. But if you look at NASCAR as a sport, I believe that anyone can then go and do that sort of sport because that's more of a technique.
Even NASCAR, it's not going to be just about the technique. It's going to be how you're going to take G-forces. And someone with a more bone density, it's going to be able to perform better. It's not just driving. They think that Formula One is just driving. It's not just that. It's first you have to have your weight and you have to have how you take those G-forces. That's why in NASCAR there hasn't been a lot of women. Danica Patrick is one of them. She's phenomenal. But she's one of them because she can take at her weight, she can take the G-forces a certain way. It's a lot of stress on the body, and you have to have a certain body to do that. F1 is not just going around a racetrack. It's almost similar to someone piloting a jet. Almost, sometimes.
If you look at other sports like golf, it all requires a lot of technique and a lot of strength, plus video games is now starting to make a massive rise. So all of those could definitely have both genders in it with no problem. For swimming especially, if I were to decide that I would like to transition and then start all of the hormone therapy for a year or so, then obviously I would probably lose some muscle mass and I would slow down in my swimming, but I don't know if that slowdown would necessarily be enough to make it fair for the cis females.
It wouldn't. The studies have shown that they still maintain even up to 3 years in terms of bone density, height and speed, muscle mass. So just wanted to make that clear. Again, studies in the link below.
The danger of it is that you're possibly outing somebody. In America alone, there's several places that it's still extremely dangerous to be an open transgender person.
That's a different discussion that you're bringing, and you're right. You are right that in some places it's very dangerous to be outed as a trans person. It is dangerous, but that is not what the issue is in the first place. We're talking a different issue, and I get it. And that issue is very important, but that's not what we're talking about, though. Yes.
If you guys are liking today's video, make sure you like, comment, okay? Help us out with that YouTube algorithm. There's no reason not to. It's free. Go.
You're done with it, eh?
We'll just do the last section because like
Sports should be gender neutral.
Their body's a vessel. It shouldn't matter whether you're male or female, because I feel like the sport, like sports in general, is growing. Especially there's this like little girl in wrestling. She wrestled in the junior division in wrestling and nationals in the 106-pound division, and she kicked all the guys' asses.
Yeah, at that age, there's, oh my God. Oh my God.
see, if these people had their way, they would.
Oh my God.
If these people had their way, they would destroy female sports. You would never have any supreme female athletes at the highest level. Go look at the Olympics. The times, the scores are not even close. These people literally want to destroy female sports. Now,
I mean, that's not their goal.
Now
but
look, it doesn't matter.
It's not their goal, but that's going to be
road-
the end point. Yeah, that's going to
the road to hell's paved with good intentions.
Yeah,
right?
there you go. I'm good.
Listen, ask female athletes if they want this, and all of them are going to be like, no, we don't want gender neutral sports.
They know.
Not if they work professionally. You would never hear about Serena Williams. You would never hear about any of these. Naomi Osaka, never hear about none of them. They would no longer exist.
I was like, go for you. So I feel like as the sport's growing, as we're evolving as a society and we're being very progressive, that it should get to the point if we're talking about gender neutral bathrooms, why can't we talk about gender neutral sports?
I actually rode and showed equestrian for 10 years, and I was like one of 2 men at the time. And then there are other roller derby leagues that are co-ed, and they work fine. Like women are going up against men, and they're bashing each other, and they're like going at it. There's a lot of things, and I feel like sports are one of these things where it's like it has to be this or it has to be that. The same as gender. It has to be this or it has to be that, and it's not.
For me, the issue that I would start seeing with this is when we start looking at scholarships. And for college level, if you start combining the sports by gender, then the scholarships are always given to the top athletes. What happens to the females that now need that scholarship necessarily to go to college, but now you've just all thrown them into one category? It all of a sudden breaks that whole opportunity for them to maybe even go to college, because now they've been training to be able to provide for themselves in college. And now, since it's all one level playing field, maybe they can beat the males, but on average, they probably won't be able to, especially depending on the sport.
So trans athletes aren't even getting scholarships either. I'm a 2-time state champion in high school, didn't get a scholarship.
Because I didn't get my scholarship. None of you other bitches get it either. Fuck y'all.
I just now been able to get my scholarship 3 years into being on a male team.
But we're talking like hypothetically in the perfect world if sports was gender
Yeah,
neutral.
and that's what I'm saying,
then-
like it's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
Everything's hypothetical in a sense because we don't have enough analytical data.
I feel as though making all sports gender neutral in that way, there is still some biological benefits to being born a man versus being born a female.
I just can't get over the fact that there are going to be all these very obvious differences, not advantages, but just differences in if we had gender neutral sports.
It's not going to be a co-ed team versus an all-male team. It's going to be a co-ed team versus a co-ed team. So I feel like there would still be strategy that would have to be played into it.
I'm thinking more like individually.
Yeah, individual. And I can see like where you're coming from that. And you mentioned wrestling earlier, just the whole combat sport community in general does have a long way to go. Definitely not completely supportive of trans athletes, but in a sense of like when I've noticed in just like studying of how like female athletes are and male athletes are, the best like MMA female athletes, cis, have male training partners. And most of the time, like, they're kicking their asses.
We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good.
I'm going to just finish his argument.
No.
Just finish it.
Unless, like, they're training for, or unless they have somebody that's better than them to push them. And then that's just making them a better athlete.
In my opinion, like, kids are extremely accepting. I have 2 gorgeous kids.
We're good. I think we're good here.
All right, this is a terrible video. It's a terrible video. Julie, you need to cast better. This is a terrible video.
Because it doesn't represent, well, what?
There's got to be better people that choose from the trans camp to represent these arguments, because this is already a contentious subject. And I think the trans camp generally is not well viewed on this topic. So getting people who misrepresent it, or let me rephrase, who can't represent it, well, come on here and say nonsense, absolute nonsense, is disappointing. So that would be what I would say. I rate this video a 0 out of 10. I don't know what to tell you. You know what? Let me rephrase. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10 because the people who had to bring the other argument did a good job and did so in a smart, calm, peaceful way and had great counterpoints. I just think, unfortunately, it wasn't a great discussion. It was like, this side says something, this side goes complete left. This side said something, then they counter what this side says, and then they say something really stupid again. It wasn't a good back and forth. So that was my thoughts on it.
There's nothing else to add here. It's a bit of a waste. A bit of a waste.
Mesmo que eu tô chovendo.